I didn't plan on being the guy everyone talked about the next morning. Honestly, I just wanted people to relax for once. We'd been working non-stop for 6 months. Overtime, weekends, missed dinners, birthdays. The company kept saying, we're a family, but it sure didn't feel like it when our paychecks stayed flat while the CEO rolled up in a new Tesla every quarter. So when our year-end celebration got canceled because the budget didn't allow it, I decided to fix it. Quietly. No speech, no drama. I just rented a small event hall, ordered food, drinks, a DJ, and covered the bill myself. I figured, if the company can't afford appreciation, maybe I can. I didn't tell anyone I paid for it. That wasn't the point. I just wanted my team to laugh, to breathe a little, and for the first few hours it worked. People danced. Our junior analysts, who never talked, did karaoke. Even the interns let loose. I remember standing near the back, watching everyone, a beer in hand, thinking, this is what it's supposed to feel like when people actually care about each other. That's when Mark, my boss, arrived. Late, of course. He never came to these things unless there was a camera involved. He walked in wearing that fake smile of his, the kind that doesn't touch his eyes, and did the usual round of, good to see you, pats on the back. I greeted him politely. He gave me a look that already said, why are you in charge of fun? By the time I grabbed my third drink, everyone was calling me over to make a toast. I hesitated, because I'm not a spotlight person, but people started chanting my name, half joking, half cheering. I caved. I stood near the center, raised my glass, and said something simple like, here's to surviving another year with this circus. You guys are the only reason it's bearable. People laughed, clapped. Someone yelled, you should be the boss. And then silence. Mark stepped forward, holding his drink. He didn't smile this time. His voice cut through the music. Maybe next year you'll try not to embarrass yourself, huh? The words hit harder than I expected. Everyone froze. The DJ fumbled the volume down. I swear I could hear the air leave the room. He said it casually, like a joke, but there was venom underneath, the kind you only recognize when it's meant to sting. Someone tried to laugh it off, but nobody followed. My face burned. I remember setting my glass down and muttering, got it. Mark kept going. Seriously, though, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but maybe next time clear things with management first. Don't want to give people the wrong impression about priorities. Priorities. That word hung there like smoke. I just nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. I looked around. My teammates were staring at the floor, pretending to check their phones. No one met my eyes. So I did the only thing I could do without breaking. I smiled, said, you're right, and walked toward the exit. No yelling, no argument, just that slow, heavy silence that follows humiliation. Outside, the air was cold enough to bite. I remember standing by my car, hearing the muffled bass from inside, wondering how something so good could turn that fast. I didn't go back in. I didn't even say goodbye. Halfway home, my phone buzzed. Messages from coworkers. Sorry, dude, that was messed up. He was out of line. Don't take it personal, man. You did great. I didn't answer any of them. When I got home, I poured a glass of water and sat in the dark kitchen. The only sound was the fridge, humming. That's when the shame hit. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I let him make me feel like I had. I kept replaying it in my head. His smirk, the way people avoided looking at me, the half-laughs dying in their throats, and underneath it all, one quiet thought. Why did I ever try so hard for people who'd never do the same for me? That's when I opened my phone and checked my bank app. The total from the party, catering, drinks, venue, stared back at me like a receipt for stupidity. $2,845. I whispered, never again, and locked my screen. I thought that was the end of it, that I'd just fade into the background, swallow my pride, and move on. But that was just the beginning. Monday morning felt like walking into a courtroom, where everyone already knew the verdict. No one said anything outright. They just looked. Half-second glances, forced smiles, that kind of don't mention it silence that's somehow louder than gossip. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and pretended not to notice the shift in temperature. The same people who'd been laughing with me on Friday now avoided eye contact, like it was contagious. Mark's office door was open. I could see him inside, leaning back in his chair, coffee in hand, talking to someone from HR. He was laughing. That sound crawled under my skin. I kept my head down, buried in spreadsheets. But at 10 narrowed, he called out, "Grant, you got a minute?" My stomach tightened. I walked in. He gestured to the chair like he was doing me a favor. "Look, about Friday," he started with that condescending half-smile. "It got a little loose." I didn't respond. "You know how it is," he continued. "You mix alcohol and enthusiasm. People say things they shouldn't. No hard feelings, right?" He was apologizing without apologizing. I forced a nod. "Sure." He leaned forward. "Good. We need team players, Grant, not showmen." That one stung more than I let show. I said, "Understood," and left before he could see the look on my face. Back at my desk, my inbox pinged, an email from accounting. Regarding Friday's expenses, we couldn't locate any receipts attached to the reimbursement form. I hadn't submitted any form because I hadn't asked for reimbursement. I'd paid for everything out of pocket. Still, curiosity got me. I opened the attachment, a spreadsheet labeled Event Budget, submitted by M. Collins, Mark's name, and right there, line by line, were the same charges I'd covered, the same catering company, the same venue. Except now they were billed under his department card. I sat there frozen, staring at the numbers. He'd taken my generosity, claimed it as company expenditure, and probably got himself praised for salvaging morale. That's when it hit me. Friday wasn't just about humiliation. It was about control. He'd turned my kindness into a punchline, then a profit. At lunch, I went out alone. Same sandwich shop as always. The owner asked if I wanted the usual. I said yeah, but I barely tasted it. My head was somewhere else. I wasn't angry yet, just empty. Back at the office, I noticed people whispering near the coffee machine. A few turned away when I walked by. One of the interns, Sam, slipped me a nervous look. Later, as I was packing up, he stopped by my desk. "Hey, Grant, just a heads up. There's a video going around." My heart dropped. "What video?" He hesitated. "From the party. Mark showed it during the leadership meeting, said it was funny." I opened my phone, notifications, links, a clip from the party. It was me, during my toast, with the caption, "When the intern thinks he's the CEO." Laughter in the background. Someone zoomed in on my face mid-toast, the frame shaking. It looked worse than it was, like I was drunk, rambling. But I wasn't. I was sober, calm, just happy. They made it look like a clown show. I stared at the screen until the colors blurred. I could hear my pulse in my ears. That's when something inside me snapped. Quietly, cleanly. Not the kind of break that makes you lash out. The kind that makes you see. I realized I'd spent years being the nice guy in a system that rewards cruelty, disguised as confidence. I'd paid for a party, literally, and they turned it into ammunition. I deleted the video. Then I deleted my company chat. If they wanted a story about me, they could finish it themselves. The next morning, I showed up early. Earlier than anyone else. I sat at my desk, drank my coffee, and watched the office fill. Mark walked in around 9, same smug confidence, same fake charm. He gave me that patronizing smile. "Oh, feeling better, champ?" I smiled back. "Never better." And for the first time, he didn't know what I meant. That day, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. To the emails he forwarded, to the expense reports he signed, to the meetings he forgot to include HR in. It wasn't paranoia, it was observation. Because something told me, if he was willing to humiliate me for a laugh, he'd been doing worse behind closed doors. That night, at home, I pulled out my laptop and started digging. Public expense records, company policies, anything that connected the dots. And I found a thread. Travel reimbursements that didn't match project codes. Vendor payments that went to the same address under different names. Tiny inconsistencies that only someone like me, the guy who handles logistics, would notice. It wasn't proof yet, but it was smoke. And where there's smoke, I closed the laptop, leaned back, and smiled for the first time in days. He thought he'd humiliated me into silence. He had no idea what silence can do. They thought I'd take it. The jokes, the whispers, the fake smiles. But here's the thing about quiet people. They don't explode. They calculate. By the end of that week, I'd already mapped the skeleton of every report Mark had filed in the last 6 months. Not because I wanted revenge, but because something in me needed the truth. And the truth was ugly. He'd been double billing travel expenses, claiming client dinners that didn't exist, submitting personal purchases as office supplies. One invoice was for a luxury spa package in Denver. During a week, our whole department was working remote. He even used the same vendor code for different transactions, like he didn't think anyone would notice. He was right. No one ever did. Until now. I didn't run to HR or blast it online. That's not how this works. I needed something solid, irrefutable, before I made a move. So I started building my case the same way I built everything else. Quietly, carefully, and with no wasted motion. Every morning I got to the office 30 minutes early, logged into archive statements, cross-checked travel logs, flagged duplicate charges. By lunch, I looked like the same tired employee eating his sandwich in silence. By evening, I was a surgeon dissecting a system that had protected him for years. After 2 weeks, I had a folder, 47 pages, organized by date and category. Everything from fake conferences to inflated contractor rates. I'd even traced one vendor back to an LLC that didn't exist before last spring, registered under his wife's maiden name. That's when I knew. It wasn't just arrogance. It was theft. And the best part? He'd signed everything himself. The next Friday, we had another all-hands meeting. Mark stood at the front of the conference room, smug as ever, giving one of his team morale speeches. He talked about integrity, about taking ownership. Every word was a lie wearing a company badge. When he wrapped up, he caught my eye and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Grant, maybe next year you'll handle the planning again. You seem to enjoy the spotlight." A few chuckles rippled through the room. I smiled back. Maybe. Inside, I'd already decided how this ends. That night, I stayed late. Most of the office was dark, except for the faint hum of monitors and the blinking red light of the printer. I made copies of the reports, labeled them by department, sealed them in a manila envelope, and wrote one name on the front: Internal Audit Division. Confidential. I didn't send it from my work email. I didn't even use my home computer. I took the documents to the library, scanned them, and sent everything from an anonymous address. No accusations, no message, just the evidence. Then I waited. Monday morning felt ordinary. Mark was in early for once, pacing his office on the phone. By noon, people from corporate had arrived. 2 from finance, 1 from HR. They were polite, quiet, professional. They asked for him. He didn't come back to his desk that day. Around 3, whispers started again, but this time they weren't about me. Someone said he was being temporarily reassigned. Another said compliance issue. No one had details, just tension, sharp and electric. At 5, I shut down my computer, stood up, and walked out. For the first time in months, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel humiliated. I felt level. That night, I poured a drink, 1, not 3, and sat by the window. Outside, the city lights blurred in the rain. My phone buzzed. A message from a coworker, Jenna. "You hear about Mark?" I typed back. No. What happened? A minute passed. They pulled his access. Something about financial discrepancies. HR says he's on leave. I set my phone down. Didn't smile. Didn't celebrate. Just breathed. Because that's the thing about karma. When it finally moves, it doesn't need applause. But it wasn't over yet. The next morning, our department head, someone above Mark, called a quick meeting. She thanked everyone for their continued professionalism and assured us appropriate measures were being taken. She didn't say his name once. That told me everything. Afterward, she asked me to stay behind. Grant, could we talk privately? I nodded. She closed the door. You've been here a while. Reliable, low drama, respected. I wanted to ask, did you notice anything off with Mark's expense management? I met her eyes. Not really my area, I said carefully, but he did handle most of that personally. She studied me for a long second. Right. Understood. Then she smiled. Small, knowing. Thank you, Grant. That was it. No fireworks, no confession. Just a line drawn in silence. That evening I stayed late again. Not to dig, not to plan. Just to finish my actual work. It felt good to just do my job without being someone's punchline. When I left the office, the building was quiet. I stepped into the parking lot, the sky turning purple. My phone buzzed once. A text from an unknown number. You think you're clever? You'll regret this. No name. But I didn't need one. I looked at the screen, exhaled through my nose, and deleted the message. Because he was right about one thing. I was clever, and I wasn't done yet. Silence has a weight. You don't notice it until it settles on your shoulders. Not heavy, just certain. By the next week, Mark's name was gone from the org chart. His office door stayed locked, his desk stripped clean. The company didn't send out a memo. They never do when it's bad. They just erase you quietly and move the furniture. People whispered, of course. They always do. Compliance issue. Personal misconduct. Someone even said he'd been escorted out mid-call. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. He'd built his career on knowing everything about everyone. Who slipped up, who stayed late, who he could make look small for fun. And when it came time for someone to know everything about him, he couldn't survive the same spotlight. I did not feel sorry for him, but I didn't feel proud either. Just steady. On Wednesday, the department head called me in again. She was polite, direct. Grant, I wanted to thank you. We've been reviewing the team's internal documentation. Your attention to detail saved us from a bigger mess. I just nodded. I was just doing my job. That's exactly why it worked, she said. You weren't trying to win anything. Then she offered me something I didn't expect. A promotion, operations coordinator. Mark's old position. I paused. The old me would have said yes instantly, would have seen it as redemption, validation, proof that doing the right thing pays off. But that's not who I was anymore. I appreciate it, I said, but I think I'm ready for something different, somewhere smaller, less noise. She smiled like she understood. Maybe she did. That Friday I cleared my desk, not out of spite, just peace. Co-workers came by one, some awkward, some sincere. You really leaving? Man, you were the good one. Mark got what he deserved. You okay? I told them the truth. I'm better than okay. At 5, I turned in my badge. The receptionist gave me a look, half pity, half respect, and said, Good luck, Grant. Outside, the winter air hit my face, crisp and clean. I got into my car, started the engine, and for the first time in months, didn't feel like I was driving away from something. I was driving toward something. A month passed. New job, smaller firm, fewer people, less politics. I spent my days managing projects and my nights actually sleeping. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I think back to that night at the party. The laughter, the silence after his insult, the sting of humiliation that had crawled into my bones. It felt like a different lifetime. And maybe it was. because I realized something no performance review or HR seminar ever teaches you. Respect isn't given in a room full of people clapping. It's earned when you walk away from one that doesn't deserve you. One afternoon, I ran into Jenna from the old office. She spotted me in line at the coffee shop. "Grant? Wow, you look happy." I smiled. "I am." She hesitated, then leaned in. "You probably already know, but Mark's official termination went through. HR found out he'd been funneling expense reimbursements for years. They're pressing charges." I nodded slowly. "That explains the silence." "They said someone tipped off internal audit anonymously." "Good," I said simply. She studied me. "You're not going to say I told you so?" I shrugged. "He said I was embarrassing. Guess now his name's the one nobody mentions." Jenna laughed softly. "You always were too calm for this place." That night, I drove home with the windows down. The air smelled like rain and clean pavement. When I got in, I poured myself a single drink, not to forget anything, but to remember how far I'd come. I walked through the quiet house, turned off my phone, and stood in the dark kitchen. Same place I'd sat months ago after the party, when shame felt heavier than air. Back then, I thought silence meant defeat. Now I knew better. Silence isn't empty. It's full of answers you don't owe anyone. A few weeks later, I got an email from the new department head at my old company. Subject line, reimbursement confirmation. Inside was a note. Short, impersonal, almost clinical. Following an internal review, a refund of $2,145 has been processed to your account. Thank you for your contribution to company morale. I stared at the number for a long time. Then I laughed. Just once. I didn't need the money, but it was nice to know they finally put a price tag on integrity. Now I work in a place where nobody raises their voice to feel powerful, where team actually means something, where kindness isn't mistaken for weakness. Every so often, I still get messages from old coworkers. "You really showed him. Wish I'd done what you did." "You're a legend, man." I don't reply. I don't need to. Because legends make noise, and I've learned there's more strength in quiet than any applause could hold. I still think about that night sometimes. Not the insult, not the crowd, not even Mark. Just that one moment before the toast, when everyone was smiling, before it all shifted, back when I still believed good intentions were enough. They're not, but self-respect is. So now when I raise a glass, it's never for them. It's for the man who finally learned how to leave the room without needing anyone to follow.